A few weeks ago, I ran into Shay and I wasn't expecting what happened. We were talking about Gillette, and there was this passion that came out of him for our hometown. And so today it's just two people having a conversation about the town that we both love. So, everyone, I am happy to introduce Shay Lundvall, our current mayor of Gillette, Wyoming, and we're going to dive right in.
Awesome.
Thanks for being here, Shay.
Awesome. Great to be with you.
Awesome. I'm so excited to get into a little bit of your background, talk about what you're currently doing as mayor, and just some things about Gillette that were kind of on the top of my head, and I know our viewers are going to want to know as well.
Great. Let's do
Okay.
it.
Who is Shay when nobody is calling you mayor?
You know, Shay is somebody that loves to just have fun and wants to just make things better and make people better, make myself better. And I think I'm also one of those guys that just likes to be competitive.
Yes, you are.
I enjoy just sitting in the stands and just watching our kids just hang out and play and do what they love as well. And I think part of it is just enjoying what Gillette has to offer and what we can do here. And I'm just looking forward to this conversation with you. And yeah, so I hope that answers your question on that one.
There's no wrong answer. It's just to get you talking a little bit, and we're going to see some sides that maybe the average paper write-up or what people see the mayor as can bring out.
Yeah, for sure.
So your dad gave 35 years to Black Thunder, and you worked the rigs through school, correct?
Yes.
Did that kid ever picture this seat, or did Gillette keep pulling you back?
Man, that's a good question. So you don't ever really growing up, I never thought about being in politics.
No.
And I think because for me, I was just always focused on going to school and sports, and it wasn't never on my bingo card. So after I went off to college and then moved back here is when I started kind of wanting to get more involved. And so at that point, I was wanting to get involved with the chamber and just different events and just seeing what's going on. And after that, I didn't have a plan. Like I wasn't like I wanted to be on city council or I wanted to be the mayor. I didn't have ambitions in that regard. It was just learning and growing and just trying to make things better.
That's
right?
awesome. So it naturally happened.
I guess you could say it that way, but
You could have built a life anywhere. What pulled you back home to Wyoming and to Gillette specifically?
so when I graduated from South Dakota State and moved back here, my wife and I, Lindsey, she was going to school at the time to finish up her degree, and so she had to, because of the arrangement I made with her mom, we had to stay in Wyoming, or South Dakota, and so she had to commute back and forth to Black Hill State, and so that's what really kind of kept us here. And at that time, I was working for the city of Gillette in the Parks Department.
You were?
I was.
So you really worked your way up.
So, yeah. So it was at that time where we had to stay here, and until she graduated, and then we just were like, okay, well, we're only going to be here a few years because I was kind of looking elsewhere and wanted to finish the requirement that her mom had, and so we got that out of the way, and then we ended up just falling in love with Gillette, and I think that's kind of where it kind of hit a crossroads for us. And so yes, we could have gone anywhere, but there's many stories like that. I think.
Yeah.
So
I as well relate to that. Like, you fall in love with this place, and then even as you travel, for me personally, I can go to all these other places and I'm like, oh, I love coming home.
for sure, yeah. Well, that's part of it, right? Yeah.
All right. Forget the title. What's a random Tuesday night in the Lundvall house look like?
Wrestling with my kids, throwing them on the couch. It could be mowing the grass. It could be sometimes just hanging out as a family, playing games. I think that's just kind of what we enjoy doing. And otherwise, it could be going to a sporting event.
Yeah, probably with your two kiddos, they're both active
we're
in
still on the front end of this deal, so we're just trying to raise two really great kids that we've been blessed with. So
far, so good. They're both amazing. Your kids are so great. I've never watched someone light up a town like you did the other day when we were talking about Gillette and what it offers. I love Gillette so much myself, and I think that's why it's always an easy sell for me to sell homes here, because why not live here? And I'm always going to talk about it like it's the best thing on earth, because I believe that. Where does that come from you? Where does that passion and love for Gillette?
I think it comes from many different traveling experiences and traveling the world. My wife and I had I guess went back to Haiti 3 times.
Whoa,
And so we did a missions trip together as a couple, and then I went individually twice. And so I think part of it, and then just traveling across the country and different experiences like that, you get to see what Gillette has and what the talent here really is. And so I'm very entrepreneurial minded. I think you can kind of relate to that too. And we have a tendency to, if we don't like something, we try to make our own path.
Yes.
And we try to bring people with us.
Yes.
To experience what we get to experience, right? And so I think part of for me is knowing the people that make up Gillette. I would put them up against anywhere. And I think when you believe in something, it's powerful.
It is very powerful, and I think that exudes to other people, whereas I could see it, and people that want to go on the same mission as us see that.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think too, if I'm thinking through that question, I think, man, how do we broadcast? How do we tell our story? That Gillette has all this talent, and how do we look out 20 years from now and say, where do we want Gillette to be? Right. Well, my kids are still young. Right. And so if I want them to be here and stay here and experience what we've got to experience here, we've got to grow. We've got to have opportunities for them to stay here.
Right. We can't just sit and have it come to us.
It's never going to happen that way.
Be proactive and go get it. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So when you talk about that energy, I think that's part of where I see sometimes what others don't see. And then how do you bring people with you to see that same thing?
Right.
That's hard.
It is hard. Because it's so vision oriented, and some people are just not able to see that. So if you can help share that vision, it's a really great thing.
Well, you share it, right? And you get folks like yourself who understand the drive. Yeah. And that drive, I mean, of all people, you know that it's never what people see. It's always behind the scenes, the work, the grind, and then they only see the result
of 20 years of
20 years of that grind,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So the meetings and the conversations, and you're courting people all the time. Mm-hmm. You're saying, hey, come look at this house, come experience this with me. I've got this for you, right? Yeah. Same thing for me. I want everybody to experience the coal mine stuff. I want everybody to experience the rec center and, the college and, the education system here, the healthcare. Like, I think that's where it just, that motivation comes from. And you get to work with people that see that same thing. And I guess in a way it's been a platform, and I hope I can do it justice, with that kind of energy.
Well, from what I see, you're hitting it. It's good. What do people miss when they just drive through Gillette? And don't stop.
And don't stop. Man, I think they miss the culture. Yeah. I think they just, sometimes I've had a lot of conversations with folks of, well, this is how Gillette used to be in the 70s and 80s, and it was a dive, or the dirt roads, and I think they miss the idea. And I've had some people, well, I've never been back there, I don't want to ever go back there. Yes. And I think it's so unfortunate.
I agree with you. I get that a lot too, as well, from people that have lived here in the past or may have a false understanding of how we've progressed and how it's not what it was in the 70s. Like, there's people that will literally be like, well, isn't the crime rate high there? No. Last time I checked, we were below the national average, and it's a very safe place to raise children. In fact, that is why I ended up staying. I loved the schools, everything it had to offer, from the rec center to sports and the community feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You touched on it, and I think the community aspect of it is really big here.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that if you've moved in here, most people move in here for a reason and then try to change stuff. And that's not, I mean, I would approach it differently in the sense of integrate into the community, be part of the solutions, help, where you can and serve where you can, and, get to know the people, because without the people, your community is dead.
I agree.
Right? Yeah. And this community has so many amazing people.
I agree.
And I want everybody to meet them. I'm like, let's go.
Yeah, but you have to get out there and actually get out of your car to meet them. You can't just drive through.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So the next question, people who build a life here get protective of it. Do you feel that?
I don't know if I get protective, because part of me, I always go back to, as in my role as the mayor, yeah, you're protective of the industries, you're protective of what historically has brought you here and what's made it what it is today. But if all we do is protect in silo, and we're never going to look out, we're never going to look and say, here's where we can be, how do we get there? And I think that's what I'm constantly trying to balance, is understanding, like, when you meet people, when you advocate for Gillette, or when you are in those conversations, like, what makes up Gillette? Well, it's the people, it's the history, it's rich, right? It's rich history. And so I want them to experience that.
Yeah.
But also I want them to understand that there's a lot of great families that have helped build this community too.
Oh my gosh.
And I want you to meet them.
Yeah.
So
good answer. I'm just going to let that sit. Fantastic. The one thing what's one thing you've never taken for granted about Gillette?
it's one thing I've never taken. I've tried never to take advantage of where I've come from, because it kind of dovetails into the previous question, I think, for me.
Yeah,
right?
I could see that.
Because I think as an athlete, as somebody that you don't think about getting in this role, like, until it actually happens, and it can be surreal even to this day. That I've been blessed to have this platform, and you just, I think there's just try to keep that humbleness, and you try to keep the staying away from the stagnation of it, and the drive to just constantly try to be as best as you can, like your version of you to be the best.
Yes. So constantly evolving.
Yeah. Because I also think, you meet so many people in real estate, in restaurant, and in all of the different industries that make up our community. And I've always believed this. I probably will now. I'm sharing it publicly. So here we go. We're private people. Like,
good.
This is it, Jessica. This is what you wanted.
This is it.
But
we're only a few questions in.
But I think the intrinsic value that I see internally is that I can always learn from somebody.
Ooh, I like that a lot. I don't hear that very often, because usually people, when they get to a certain point, stop learning. And I feel like, personally, you can learn from pretty much everyone. Sure. There's always something that everybody has to offer. It doesn't matter what level you're at.
For sure.
So I love that you said that. If someone has never been here, where would you take them first?
I would probably take them to our downtown.
Really?
I think our downtown has such incredible history.
Yeah, that's
And you don't have to necessarily be a history buff, but you can see some of the buildings, and you can see how Gillette has evolved from the railroad times, and still look back and say, man, look at how far we've come. And so I think that would probably be the first place. I think there's some really great local businesses down there too.
Yeah.
So
That's cool. Whenever I do a tour for somebody that is looking to relocate here, I'll hit downtown first, and then we'll go up to the rec center and then everywhere else. But
yeah.
I think once you hit those,
And when you do that, what kind of response do you get?
whoa, like, do you actually have a building like this? I've never seen anything like this. I think people don't appreciate what we have here locally in that rec center. But even our downtown has taken a whole huge facelift over the last like 5 years, and it looks so good.
Yeah,
There's a lot down there.
I agree.
But yeah, the rec center is one of a kind. All right, we're gonna get into some other stuff. Before you answer, I want you to say something to the people watching, because you won't say it about yourself. In about 3 years, you've proposed $500 million advance manufacturing project on the table for this town with a $100 million state grant behind it, correct?
Yes.
You helped stand up the Wyoming Innovation Center, finding new life for coal instead of walking away from it. And this June, the National League of Cities held up Gillette to the whole country as proof of how a small city thrives. So that's record. Let me ask you some harder questions. Is that all correct information?
Yep, for the most part. Yep.
Okay. What are you super proud of? Not like the press version.
I think I'm most proud of how we've been able to build the relationships and the trust that Gillette is on the map. Like, Gillette is a destination.
Yeah.
And when I look, like, one of the questions in one of the League of Women Voters, I was kind of caught off guard, and it was something to the effect of, where do you want, after your term, where do you want to be, or something like that? What do you want your legacy to be, or something like that?
People to remember you.
Yeah. And I don't want my name on lights. Like, I don't necessarily want it on a plaque, right? Like, that's not me.
Flash isn't you.
That's not, I don't want it. But on the same hand, I want us to be proud.
For real.
I want us to look back and be like, look, this, outside of coal, oil, and gas, this investment has never happened in the history of Campbell County since the inception, since Edward Gillette.
Yeah.
And I think that's what is so exhilarating, that I've been blessed that, honestly, God gave me those opportunities, and at the right time, to be at the place at the right time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So okay, here you go. You don't get to see that side of me.
This is the passion I was talking about.
But I think that's the drive.
Yeah.
And when they get to see it, and those folks that want to make that business capital investment decision, then they get to integrate into and meet the people, and everything we've been talking about, they get to see.
Yes.
And now it becomes real to them that Gillette is a great place to do business. Wyoming is a great place to do business.
And then it all clicks.
And then it starts to click. So that's how I think I would answer that.
Excellent. You come from coal, and your dad worked for a long time out there, and now you recruit nuclear. How do you hold both?
So holding both, to me, has always been not an either or conversation. It's been an and. It's an extension of what we already do. And when we look at the the pie, and where are we at, and just kind of what I was saying before, the diversifying of that pie only happens when you go out and get it.
Correct.
It's never going to just come to you. And that's the danger that I believe Gillette has kind of fell into, before I took office in 22. Well, it'll just, everyone wants to do the studies, and those are fine. We're here. Everybody's wanted growth, but I don't know if they've known how to do it, right?
Probably not.
And I think it takes a team effort to get to where you're headed, right? Like, it's never just one person, but one person has to start it. One person has to initiate and keep going, and
Keep that focus
and keep the focus and the follow through on stuff.
Yeah.
So I believe I've used my unique set of skills, and here we are. And so balancing it becomes pretty easy in the sense that you're looking towards the future and saying, this is what will help diversify that pie, and it'll support. And maybe I shared this with you before, but I had a friend of mine who, his son was in the military, and is in the process or just finishing up becoming a nuclear engineer.
Oh, perfect.
So they live here, and now they're wanting the opportunity is on the table for their son to come back home and work in BWXT.
How ideal is that? Like, you can't ask for better.
That's what we want.
Right.
Otherwise, he would have to be completely somewhere else across the United States. Yeah.
That hurts my mom heart for her. But that's how we grow.
That's exactly right. But then you get the family aspect of it that's probably hardly ever discussed.
Correct.
Is how keeping the family unit together is helpful. And anyway.
Well, then you don't have to move away when he finds someone and they end up getting married and having their own family. That's the community thing again.
That's right. Yeah. I think you want to try to start to, set some roots here.
Yeah.
And start growing.
Yeah.
So
great.
That's a great question.
I'm going to take a little tangent for a minute and talk about manufacturing the nuclear versus storing the waste.
Yeah.
Can you word that plainly for everyone?
Sure.
Because I think that's something that most people misunderstand.
Yeah, and it can easily be misunderstood.
Correct.
So, and I'm by no means an expert. So if you're watching this and listening, I'm no expert.
Yeah,
okay.
This is all about our opinions.
But I do know enough to just be dangerous. And through the last 4 years, I've had to learn, on a crash course of some of these nuances. Sure. But storing the waste is illegal in the state of Wyoming right now, as it sits. The only people that can change it is the legislature. Okay. So storing high level waste. So once the fuel form goes to the customer and then it's used, it's just called spent. Mm-hmm. They take that fuel, then it's hot, and then they would ship that back to a location. Mm-hmm. And so right now there's, and I'm going to try to not be too granular, but there's a repository that the federal government has never dealt with. Mm-hmm. And so they've tried Yucca Mountain, and they're still working through that. But now, so essentially what they end up having to do is store it on site at different locations across the United States. And they're in big casks, cement casks. Very safe, very regulated, very, watched.
I'm sure.
And I believe the amount of fuel over the last 50 years sits in the middle of a football field. So for those that are visual, there's not a ton of waste. Now, everyone's talking about the projection of where it's going and where you're going to do with it. And that's a real question. Those are real concerns. I don't want to water that down. But on the same hand, that's solvable. And I think with some of the technologies and of repurposing that fuel and still utilizing some of it, I think there's still some opportunities there. So that's the waste storage side of it. The fuel side of it is strictly and I wish I...
Do we need a whiteboard?
Yeah, right. No, but it's like a 1-inch cylinder for this particular fuel form, okay? And so once that takes place, so BWXT, they mine it, uranium, yellow cake, and then it gets converted, and then it gets enriched, and then it would get sent to BWXT here in Gillette, and then it gets, it's super, very regulated. the like very small cylindrical balls of uranium, like pipette size, and they have to be, and you can. I was out in West Virginia and seeing their facility out there. It's incredible.
I bet.
So it's very low level waste, or very low level. It hasn't been spent. So what ends up happening is you have like gloves, like hospitals, like you have to wear these suits and booties.
Hazmat suits.
Kind of. And so that's how it's all regulated and whatnot for that. Then you take those clothes off, essentially, those booties and stuff, and it becomes low level waste. Hospitals use it, or do it rather, and even in our oil and gas industry and coal mines, like there's all of that low level waste. So it's not until after it's been spent that it becomes somewhat dangerous. Okay. So what we're trying to accomplish here in the manufacturing side of it with BWXT and now Kairos is a customer of BWXT, or they're tag teaming, right? And so Kairos has a contract with Google to provide them 500 megawatts of power. Okay, so I just I'll have to bring you a sample. It's super cool. It'll give you a visual. Remind me to do that. I just got the sample from them, and it's literally a cylindrical ball, and it's cut in half, and you can see the fuel form. How cool. And that's what they're going to be making. BWXT is going to be making it for Kairos. So you'll be able to see exactly what that is. So essentially, it's like mining coal. Yeah. Right. So you mine the coal out, and then it gets put on crushed, and then put on trains and shipped out. Yeah. That's essentially what's happening here. Like it's getting brought here, and then it's getting shipped out to customers.
Excellent. So nothing's being stored here, because I've seen all of the Facebook threads.
No, I understand where some of it's coming from. I get it.
So do I.
But there's going to be a byproduct of waste here, but it's low level waste. It hasn't been spent. Right? Yeah.
It's nothing more dangerous than other things that we have around in the area.
Yeah.
Cool. I knew we had to touch that. Sorry.
Yeah, I think it's great. Yep.
This next one, we don't have to publish, but I think it's something that has been brought up a few times. And feel free to answer it. If you don't want to, it's fine. You got accused of closed door deals in your own community. How did you handle it, and can you explain?
Look, I think this is a very important question, and I absolutely have no problem answering it. And I think on the onsets of the conversations that took place with BWXT, there was a lot of courting going on, trying to understand, is Gillette and Wyoming the place you want to do business? So at the very beginning of all of this, BWXT had a contract with the Wyoming Energy Authority. And it was to basically figure out and crisscross the state and see, okay, what does the supply chains look like? What does the workforce look like? What does the communities want?
Essentially do their due diligence.
Doing their due diligence. Yeah. And so that in that kind of juncture is where I met Josh Parker. It was with the Wyoming Innovative Entrepreneurs Group that Mike Wandler started. And the annual kickoff inauguration was in Casper. Yeah. And so I was part of that group, and there was like five or 10 of us at the very first one. And so it was at that point of trying to like, hey, bring Josh to showcase Gillette, right? Everything that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
So I was just actually this last weekend, I was just talking to a gentleman about this very thing. And so in that conversation, they were wanting to know, one, does Gillette even want us?
Right.
Because they were told in many other communities, nope, we don't want manufacturing in our community. Right. And I'm like, whoa, hang on, this is what we do, right? Like this is what we can. So anyway, we started having conversations about, this is our college, this is the hospital, this is all of the infrastructure that they would need, but they were looking at, Jessica, the community. Oh. They were looking at whether or not this would be the place that they would want to invest into, just everything that we've been talking about. Right. So It had nothing to do with NDAs. It had nothing to do, that didn't come until later when they actually started to really get serious about moving.
About the numbers and everything.
Yeah. So the NDA then came about when they were looking at proprietary information, their competitive advantage, their processes, and what all that goes into their nuance of their business. And I personally did not sign the NDA for legal reasons. The city administrator,
Conflict, right?
well, yeah.
Yeah.
And the city attorney and the city administrator is the one who signed it.
Okay.
So these are very important nuances. And so then it became this whole idea of secret meetings. So in those meetings, like they're wanting to meet with stakeholders within the community to figure out, is this the place that we can see ourselves? So we had set up multiple meetings and conversations with chamber and folks that would be a part of the chamber, and do they want to integrate themselves here? How would they integrate themselves here? Nonprofits. A lot of the nonprofits they wanted to meet.
Like this is a business venture on their side. So
For sure.
They're looking at it a whole different way than I think most people would think of, that whole process.
And that's a good point, Jessica. And I think that's where maybe the detour took a wrong turn. And I'll be honest, I'll own, the communication side of it. It is paramount that we have good communication with the community. I want that. I desire that. And and I say that because early on, I was just telling a guy this weekend on Saturday, BWXT wasn't completely sold on Gillette.
Really?
So in some of their federal grants, 48C tax credit that they were going after, they had to put two communities, or they were looking at two communities to go to. Well, part of the requirements was to be an energy community. Well, in the state of Wyoming, it was narrowed down to Sheridan and Gillette. So I was competing with Sheridan. And we all know that rivalry, right? So you're welcome.
Lifelong, starting from the football field.
Yes. But so I wasn't guaranteed for them to even come to Gillette. So I didn't even know that they were going to be putting Gillette down until later on in the conversation. And I often thought, I don't want to bring something and make it a big deal, because it is a big deal.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to have egg on my face, egg on the community's face, egg on the company's face if it doesn't come to fruition.
Treat it with caution.
So we had to proceed with caution.
Yeah.
And we also had to make sure that all I's were dotted and T's were crossed, and they were committed to actually coming to Gillette. Once we had that firm commitment, that's when it became public, because then we all know we're all rowing in that same direction.
Right.
You with me?
Yeah.
So now it's not like no one's trying to hide anything. Nobody wanted any of that, that proprietary information and their processes to get out. Yeah. And quite frankly, their competitors.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm thinking in the back of my head, business oriented wise, like that stuff is very sensitive information. And like you said, you have your competitors out there. I'm seeing it a whole different way. It has to stay hush hush till it's certain.
Yeah. I mean, and then, like I said, once it became real and they were fully cemented in, then it was game on, right? And they're going to be having more public meetings. So stay tuned for all that. I think those are the things that are, looking out. Like at the end of July, I think they're going to be having something here in Gillette.
Yeah.
So
yeah, not everything can be public right away.
It's hard. I mean, if Costco was, and they asked for, non-disclosures, would people be as up arms of that? I don't know. We're not talking to Costco, but would we have the same mentality and the same response if Costco was wanting that?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Well, I see it the business way, like I said, because if Costco is wanting to buy land here and come in and franchise, like I would not be able to say anything.
Correct.
You were in the same spot.
Correct.
Yeah, I gotcha. All right. What did you try that didn't work and what did it teach you? If there is something.
Like in what regard? What are you thinking?
And just in your term, is there something that you've tried that was like, all right, let's pivot from this?
Yeah.
Yeah?
So I often get questioned on this because when I became mayor, I had to cast a pretty broad net.
Oh, for sure.
And there's no playbook that says, hey,
Yeah.
Jessica, you should
What
do
to
this.
expect when you're
Yes, when
mayor.
you become the mayor, here, check all this stuff out, right?
The 101.
Yeah, 101.
The
But you never know where opportunities are going to come from. So when I was looking at all the different, honestly, it was a God thing. I can't take credit for it. Because when I started looking at kind of the different industries and how do I tell Gillette's story, but we want good paying jobs. We want high level opportunities and what does an anchor industry look like? What is where's that going to come from?
right.
And it wasn't until I joined the Wyoming Innovative Entrepreneurs Group.
Really?
Yeah, because you get I was exposed to innovators and entrepreneurs across the state,
Whoa.
and so from retail to restaurants to hotels, from Jackson to Cheyenne and Rock Springs to Gillette.
That's a lot.
So when you get that kind of momentum in a room or having conversations, it just happened that you keep trying stuff, right? Like you keep having conversations and you're kind of just, for me anyway, trying to figure out, okay, is there opportunities in hotels? And yeah, there are. But I see those more of
Yes.
support roles.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we need anchor
Yeah.
tenants.
I'm going to relocate for this job.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, that the real estate is, the inventory is very low.
So low.
And so the price point, anywhere from 300 to 400,000.
Yeah.
And that's not the best for entry level.
No, it's not.
As a realtor, you're going, well, how do I help this client? Because they can't afford it. There might not be the loans, they not be able to, whatever their financial story is, all dictates whether or not they can afford that.
Right.
So I'm looking at all sorts of stuff. And it just, like I said, it was at the right place at the right time. And I think in a way you try to just keep failing forward, right?
Yeah.
And do it fast.
Yeah. Learn quick what didn't go right and then apply and keep going. Yeah.
And I think maybe this is just me and my personality, but I think you'll appreciate it too, is, it's the adaptability, being able to adapt on the fly is hard for people.
It is.
Right? Because some people and some engineers, and you're married to one, it's sometimes it'd be very black and white.
Yeah.
We got to take it slow. Like we have to be really methodical. We got to
really think about
really
this.
think through,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Here's the danger. That opportunity has already passed you by.
100%.
By the time you've already decided that you want to investigate it.
Yes.
Right?
This is what I tell every investor. By the time you've sat there and run your numbers, the smart people have just already bought it like 3 times over.
100%.
Yeah.
So I didn't have time.
Mm-mm.
I had to make a decision and I went with it. I knew that this was going to make or break a lot of stuff. Yeah. And I guess I was still am willing to not get reelected for trying and doing the best that we possibly could, than to just sit back and hope for the best. And man, this has been awesome. We've just all got to experience these wonderful opportunities in our life. And No, that's not what I was elected to do. I want to make a difference.
Yeah. Be a real leader.
Try.
You are. You're out there doing everything, getting in the ring. Got to be doing the gladiating. uh, okay. What's still unfinished? The things that you won't leave undone.
Yeah. So this has come up more recently than
I'm sure, given the time.
Yeah. But I think there's no doubt that we're gonna experience some growing pains over the next year to 3 years and beyond. So, oh man. Yeah. And I think what's undone is working collaboratively with our contractors and understanding like how do we cut the red tape so that we can be much more efficient. We still have to follow regulations. Nobody wants realtors, like developers, nobody wants to circumvent it. And if you do, that's the cheap way out. Yeah. However, I do believe that if you get folks in the room that know and understand and want to make those processes better, that there's this, and this is just one piece of the pie for me, one goal. And that's bridging that gap between the contractor world and streamlining it for them to get projects done and things of that nature. I think the second, what's that?
It's not so lengthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And still follow federal guidelines and our codes and things of that nature.
Yeah.
And then having, I think maybe in tandem with that is having, with this growth, having a filter group, a group of people that can filter through some of that have experienced it, been here a while, that understand the development world. I don't know what that's going to shape up to be like yet, but I think there's some improvement there that we can really hit on. And we've already started those conversations. I think the second thing that's unfinished is continuing this story, and we're starting on this right now. Council just approved 81,000 to broadcast and tell and market Gillette. I think we're not done telling that story yet, and that has not been done before. And experiencing and showcasing our assets and why Gillette is such an incredible place to do business, and use Kairos and BWXT as kind of the anchor tenant. And they want to be a part of it. They want to see that too. But again, they're already integrating, and that's why why you, as a restaurant, if you're a brewery or something, why you would want to come to Gillette, because the upside, right? Very few people get the opportunity to get in on the ground floor of an uphill growth spurt.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
And
you could be a part of that.
And you can be a part of that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's so good. Why does a town of 34,000 run a 24/7 shelter for kids from 5 to 21, the Yes House?
So
That's another great thing.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think the Yes House has been a phenomenal asset to our community for as many years, 50 years. Yeah. And I think we have to realize that not everybody has the home life that I've been blessed with. And I think that they need mentors. I think that they deal with a population that isn't always glamorous. Yeah. There are mental health concerns in a community, in ours for sure. And if there's things that the city can do to be helpful, I definitely want to be a part of that. But we also have to know the roles. We have to know when we have to stay in our lane, and that's hard too, because we can't be everything to everyone. And from my perspective as the mayor, I want to rely on the experts to be able to work with those kids, and even with the parents, right? Yeah. But the Yes House, as you know, has been an anchor for many years here.
It's one of those outstanding things, like the rec center, sure. Just a feature that an average town doesn't have.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. When something hard hits Gillette, what does this town do that others don't?
You're awesome. I think what Gillette does is they link arms, and they become an offensive line, and they move the ball down the field. And I think that's hard for a lot of people to understand. Yes. And to see holy cow, that they actually did it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think you see that from healthcare. I think you see it from higher education to the school district to like the tenacity. And I was asked what was one word to describe Gillette. And I said dynamic.
Oh.
Because dynamic to me reflects the fluidness, but you're not static.
No.
Right? Like you're adaptable, you can overcome. It doesn't mean you're complacent, but you have to be able to understand that sometimes it's going to be rough.
Yeah.
And I think any growing pains are going to be rough.
Yeah. But those pains are because you're changing and you're pursuing a bigger goal and you're reaching that goal by going through those pains.
For sure.
So even when we have rough times, being a community that joins together and becomes that offensive line, like you're saying.
Super powerful, right? I mean, I talk to mayors across the state and they only dream of what we have here. And I think that's a testimony in and of itself. And they want what we have.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it's so much easier to sell.
Yeah.
Right?
It is. It is because
they want to see, companies want to see like you get stuff done and you're investing in yourself.
Yeah.
And I mean, you of all people know when you invest in yourself, what does that do? It builds your confidence. Yeah. It builds your, it builds everything.
Absolutely everything. I mean, you invest in yourself and you're able to give more to others. So, I mean, same thing for the community. It's all just different levels.
For sure.
Yeah. This could have been a ghost town when energy turned in the past. What kept that from happening?
Well, I think it's something that you have kind of ties into what the last question was, at least to me anyway, that you have folks that have continued to build on and see the vision and fight through some of the challenges that a community faces. And, honestly, you look back at politicians, if you want to call it that, but Mike Lindsey was a really, he was an anchor in the community. And at a time of growth and change and coal mines coming in and no water and trying to solve all these problems that, they didn't have cell phones back then.
No.
They didn't have the media. They didn't
Can you
have
imagine
this
our
set
jobs
up.
like that?
It would be crazy today, right? So did they have naysayers and did they have things that 100%? But their outlets were completely different than what you and I experience today.
This is one you and I have talked about. I think it was our last conversation. We were talking about how spouses are one of the biggest life hacks is to find the right person that can support you. And your whole life is just different. How has Lindsey been a benefit to you and supported you through the whole mayor, everything? Even the door knocking.
Yeah, man. Holy cow. Yeah.
Dish on that.
So I think there's no question without, picking the right spouse would be a game changer in this. If you were to ask her back in 2016 if this is where we would be today, absolutely not. She hates politics. But she's also come alongside in just in ways that you never see.
I bet.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's hard. I don't even describing it. I'll never be able to give it the justice it deserves. And so I think when you see someone like my wife, Lindsey, she's strong. She's
Very.
confident. She couldn't be any better first lady of this city than I don't even know what. She's kind.
Has the biggest heart.
Oh,
yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So I think when you ask that to me, I just have to think about I don't even know if I'd ever be where I'm at. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I just don't.
I totally agree.
And that bleeds over into so many different areas of life. And but that was a decision almost will be 19 years this year ago that we made, and so
Dude, you're almost at 20.
it's crazy.
That's
crazy.
so commendable.
So
That says a lot for
she
itself.
had to put up with me. So that's the crazy
One
part
of my
about
favorite memories of her is when she was training us for Dancing with the Stars, and she would not allow us to have a water break. She was literally telling my 400-pound husband he couldn't have a water break. And she's like this little 100-pound blonde thing. It's great.
She's tough.
Yes, very tough. We love her so much.